Welcome to the Bookcast.
Ever feel like you're just not getting through to someone? Like you're speaking different languages almost.
Oh, definitely. Happens all the time, right? You say one thing, they hear something completely different.
Exactly. Well, we've all been there, and today we're kind of on a mission to figure out why that happens.
Yeah, we're diving into Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erikson. It's got this really interesting take on it.
It does. He breaks people down into these four colors: red, yellow, green, and blue.
That's the core idea. Reds are driven, yellow's enthusiastic, greens are all about harmony, and blues, well, they like precision.
Right. And our goal today really is to give you some tools, to help you spot these types and maybe interact a bit better.
In work, at home, pretty much everywhere, it can really help improve things.
Totally. So where did this whole four-color thing even start for Erikson?
It's actually a pretty funny story. It started from frustration, really.
Oh.
Yeah, he met this businessman who was successful, but felt like, well, like the book title says, surrounded by idiots.
Huh. Okay. Relatable.
And that got Erikson looking into something called the DISC method.
Right.
It's a framework for, understanding how people communicate.
DISC. Okay, that sounds familiar. What's behind that?
Well, it was developed by Bill Bonstetter and son David, TTI Success Insights. And the question that started it was kind of surprising.
Yeah.
Could a salesman sell more farm supplies
Huh?
just by looking at the farm, observing the farmer's setup?
Really? Just by looking?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Erikson's own father used similar ideas based on William Moulton Marston's theories, training salespeople.
Interesting.
Yeah, they'd look at a farm. Was everything perfectly neat, like immaculate? Maybe a blue farmer?
Okay.
Organized. Or did they have all the latest gear, newest tractors? Maybe a red farmer,
Yeah.
focused on results, advancement.
So it's about picking up on these behavioral clues.
Exactly. And the fundamental point, the real key takeaway, is that communication happens on the listener's terms.
Ah, right. We all filter stuff.
Totally. Through our own biases, experiences.
Mhm.
What you intend isn't always what lands.
So you got to adapt your style to really connect. Makes sense.
Precisely. You need to speak their language, so to speak.
Okay, let's break down these types then. Starting with the reds, you said driven.
Yeah, reds, they react fast. They want control. They want results. Think highly competitive.
Like the neighbor Erikson mentions, Pele, with the gardening.
Exactly. Super intense about it. Reds are direct. They don't like wasting time. Impatient with slowness.
Like that CEO making a super quick phone call.
That's a classic red example. They see themselves as motivated, decisive, independent.
Got it. Driven, direct. What about yellows then? You said enthusiastic.
Yellows also react quickly, but they're all about involvement, optimism, energy. They hate routine.
Okay, so more spontaneous.
Very much so. Erikson talks about his sister Marita, who'd find something positive even if it was pouring rain.
Ah, sounds familiar.
They're sociable, creative, like his friend Robin, always bursting with new, sometimes wild garden ideas. They see themselves as charming, enthusiastic, outgoing.
The life of the party type, maybe? Okay, moving on to greens. Slow reactions you mentioned.
Yeah, greens take their time. Their big focus is on relationships, stability. They're not fans of change.
So more team-oriented, perhaps.
Definitely. Think reliable, patient, kind. The book gives examples like Maja at the reception desk, always helpful, or Christopher helping with a boiler issue, very steady.
The glue that holds things together sometimes.
You could say that. They see themselves as calm, kind, reliable people, very dependable.
Okay, and the last one, the blues. Also slower reactions.
Yes, but their focus is totally different. It's all about organization, facts, precision, less focus on the relational side.
So very analytical.
Extremely. Detail-oriented, cautious. Think of the astronaut Christopher Fugel saying example, meticulous planning.
Right, they need all the info.
Absolutely. Like the CEO who needed that super detailed proposal for the leadership program before even considering it, they see themselves as correct, cautious, disciplined.
Wow, okay. So, four very distinct ways of operating. What's the main message Erikson wants us to get from all this?
It really boils down to this. Those people you sometimes think are, well, idiots. They're likely just different behavioral styles.
Not wrong, just different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And David Bonstetter, one of the DISC pioneers, basically said, if you don't get these principles, you'll probably keep feeling surrounded by idiots.
Because you're not seeing their perspective or communicating in a way they understand.
You got it. It's about respecting those differences and learning to adapt a little.
So, understanding these reds, yellows, greens, and blues isn't about labeling, but about unlocking better communication.
Precisely. It can genuinely change how you interact with people.
Which brings us to something for you listening to think about.
Yeah, now that you have this glimpse into these styles, how might you approach that next tricky conversation?
With that person you maybe find difficult. Could you spot their color, adjust your approach just a tiny bit?
Something to observe in your daily life. See if it makes a difference. It just might. Basically trying to understand why people act the way they do.
Exactly. We've got this source material that offers, well, almost like a language for behavior. The idea is to help navigate interactions, maybe smooth things out a bit.
Right, like learning Spanish or something. You can know the words, but you need practice, real-world stuff, to actually get fluent beyond just, the basics.
And a huge part of that is nonverbal, isn't it? Body language. I read somewhere there could be like 700,000 different signals.
Wow, 700,000? That's way more than words in most languages.
It's massive. And while, sure, some things like a smile are kind of universal, interpreting most body language is super personal. Depends on mood, the situation, if someone feels safe.
Makes sense. And this model we're looking at uses 4 colors, red, yellow, green, and blue, as shorthand for different styles, different ways they communicate, use body language, even handle uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a handy framework.
So let's start with red. What does a red look like in action?
Okay, reds. You'll often see them with, well, quite an upright posture, sometimes even a bit rigid, maybe a military background, or just naturally dominant.
Okay. And how do they move?
Purposefully. Usually fast-paced. They kind of expect others to keep up or get out of the way.
What about, like, handshake?
Oh, firm. Definitely firm. It's about control, showing they're in charge. Facial expressions tend to be more serious, reserved, not prone to huge, beaming smiles right off the bat.
And eye contact.
Direct, intense even. Gestures are usually limited, but can be controlling, like pointing.
Right. Do they like people getting close?
Not initially, no. They tend to maintain a bit more personal space at first. Their voice, loud, clear, confident, doesn't really waver, and they talk fast.
Got it. Fast, direct, in control. Okay, so complete shift maybe?
Yeah.
What about yellows?
Yellows, yeah, quite different. Much more relaxed posture, usually looks cheerful, gait is quick, energetic.
And they're more touchy-feely.
Oh, absolutely. Very tactile, frequent hugs, a hand on your arm, pat on the leg, that kind of thing. They enjoy closeness. Lots of smiling, too.
Right, so their eye contact is different from reds.
Still intense, but in a friendly, cheerful way. Not challenging. And gestures. Very expressive. They talk with their hands, their whole body sometimes.
Yeah, I can picture that. Sounds like they might invade your personal space bubble a bit.
They might. They enjoy that closeness. And their voice is really engaging, lots of variation in pitch, rhythm, super enthusiastic.
They also talk fast.
Yep, fast like the reds, but maybe sometimes even faster than they can quite articulate clearly. Lots of energy there.
Okay, interesting contrast. Let's move on to the greens. How do they present?
Greens are generally more relaxed. Posture-wise, they might lean back when sitting. Their pace is pretty unhurried, slower than reds and yellows.
Are they okay with touch, like yellows?
They can be, yeah, comfortable with touch, especially with people they know well, but they're a bit more cautious with strangers. They definitely value their own space.
How about facial expressions? Smiles.
Amiable, kind of neutral, friendly. You'll get smiles, but maybe not the huge, exaggerated ones like yellows, at least not at first. Eye contact is very affable, though. Easygoing.
And gestures. Voice.
Gestures tend to be smaller scale, more reserved, especially if they're in a big group. Their voice is often softer, warmer, maybe lower volume. Less variation in rhythm compared to yellows.
So speech speed is kind of in the middle.
Exactly. Slower than reds and yellows, but definitely faster than the blues.
Okay, which brings us to the blues. What's their typical style?
Blues often seem very still. Whether they're standing or sitting, there's a stillness about them.
Not big movers, then.
Not really, and they prefer distance. If you get too close, they might react by kind of closing off, crossing arms or legs, that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Facial expressions.
Much less expressive. Can sometimes seem a bit unemotional on the surface, though that's not necessarily what's going on inside. Eye contact is direct, though, like reds.
But fewer gestures.
Minimal gestures, yeah. And they need a relatively large bubble of personal space. Don't crowd a blue.
Got it. And their voice and speech.
Voice tends to be contained, subdued, thoughtful, very little variation in tone, and they speak slowly, deliberately.
Slow and steady. Okay, so those are the 4 types in theory. But the source had this great company party story, right? where things got kind of mixed up.
Oh, yeah, that was classic. It showed how pressure, maybe a little alcohol, can shift things. You had the usually reserved blue person suddenly dancing like crazy on a table.
No way.
Yep. And the super energetic yellow became quiet and withdrawn. Even the dominant red was seen kind of looking for reassurance from some of the usually passive greens.
Huh. So it really shows these aren't like rigid boxes people fit into.
Not at all. There are tendencies, preferences, and context matters. Stress matters. It highlights why just spotting a color isn't the whole story.
Right. The real skill is adapting your style, isn't it? Because most people you meet probably won't have the same primary color as you.
Exactly. If you can recognize someone's preference, how they like to communicate, how much space they need, their pace, you can adjust your own approach.
And that can head off misunderstandings before they even start. Just knowing why someone might be acting a certain way.
Totally. It's about understanding their language, both the words and the unspoken stuff. It gives you a much richer picture.
So maybe the takeaway for you listening is to start paying a bit more attention to these cues. Think about these colors in your next meeting, or even just chatting with family.
Yeah, see if you can spot the tendencies. How does recognizing, say, a blue's need for space or a yellow's enthusiasm change how you interact?
What surprising insights might you get just by observing these signals a little more intentionally? Something to think about. Today, we're getting into how different personality styles deal with stress. We're using that, red, yellow, green, blue framework. It's based on various psychological models. And our mission really is just to pull out the key bits for you from the material we looked at.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how these patterns, these stress reactions, they sort of pop up again and again in different models. It suggests there's something pretty fundamental about how we cope when things get tough.
Definitely. So let's kick off with the yellow type under stress. The sources say they look for attention to feel better.
That's right. They often become more talkative, maybe need to be the center of attention even more than usual.
Right. Seeking that external boost.
Exactly. It's like their way of managing the internal pressure. They reach outwards.
And what about their optimism? I read it can actually go into overdrive.
It can, yeah. It can become almost extreme, sometimes leading to these kind of wild, unrealistic plans. It's like a defense mechanism, but maybe not always the most practical one.
Okay, so if you're trying to help a stressed yellow friend or colleague, what works?
Social stuff. Definitely social interaction. Suggesting, a party or even just a casual get-together. Anything that provides that positive buzz, they thrive on.
Got it. Okay, let's switch gears to the green personality. For them, stress seems to kick in when their security feels shaky.
Security and stability are huge for them.
So things like being given unfamiliar tasks without much explanation.
Yeah, or feeling left alone in a tense meeting, or having someone really forceful like a red come down on them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The sources also listed things like unfinished tasks.
Big one for greens. They like closure.
Right. And not having private space, sudden changes, having to redo work.
Oh, redoing work is tough. They often see it as a sign they failed personally.
And team conflict, being put on the spot in big groups.
All major stressors. Basically anything that disrupts their sense of predictability and calm.
But how do they typically react when they are stressed?
They tend to pull back, withdraw.
Become sort of cold, rigid.
Exactly. They might avoid whatever or whoever is causing the stress. They can get quite hesitant, indecisive. And they often internalize guilt, blaming themselves.
And at work, this could look like stubbornness, just refusing to change tack.
Yeah, digging their heels in, even if their way isn't really working anymore. It's that need for the familiar, the secure.
So helping a stressed green, what's the best approach?
Give them space, permission to just rest.
Okay.
Alone time is really key. Let them do quiet things they enjoy, like gardening, reading, maybe a solo trip to the cinema.
Right. They need that downtime to kind of reset.
Precisely, to find that sense of security again.
All right, moving on to the blue personality type. For blues, stress seems to often revolve around their plans getting disrupted. Is that right?
Spot on. Control and order are paramount for blues.
So things like maybe criticism of their work, especially if they aim for perfection.
Definitely. Or spontaneous decisions from higher ups that throw a wrench in the works.
Okay. What else? The material mentioned highlighting risks too much.
Yes, they're often risk aware already, so dwelling on it can just increase anxiety.
Unexpected social visits, errors, messing up their careful plans.
Anything that introduces errors or forces them off their planned procedure.
Like being told to just innovate and ignore the established way.
That can be really tough for them.
Yeah.
And being around very emotionally expressive people can also be draining and stressful.
Interesting. So how does a blue typically respond when they're stressed out?
They can become quite pessimistic, more so than usual, even leading to a kind of despair or lethargy.
Wow, okay.
And they might get really pedantic, very critical of small errors, maybe acting like a bit of a know-it-all.
And they slow down. That seems counterintuitive.
While they slow down to avoid making mistakes, their focus narrows intensely onto preventing any further errors, accuracy over speed.
Right, okay. So helping a stressed blue, what do they need?
Privacy is big. Give them time and space to think. They need to analyze the situation, process it methodically, figure out a new plan. Don't rush them.
Just let them work through it in their own way.
Generally, yes. Though if the pessimism seems really deep, some proactive, gentle support might be needed eventually.
Okay, so pulling this all together,
Yeah.
what's the main takeaway message about stress and these personality styles?
I think it's that under stress, we basically become more like ourselves, you know? Our typical behaviors just get amplified.
Right, turned up to 11.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what might actually energize one type, like maybe pressure gets a red going,
Yeah.
that same pressure could be really, really damaging for, say, a green or a blue.
That's a crucial point. So for you listening, here's something to maybe chew on. Thinking about your own primary style and maybe the styles of people you work with or live with, how could understanding these stress responses actually shift how you communicate? How you collaborate maybe, both at home and at work, what small tweaks, what little adjustments could make a really big difference in lowering stress for yourself and for others around you. Definitely some food for thought there. Thanks for diving in with us today.